Hey guys, if you enjoy the deep web videos, be sure to subscribe because I will be uploading a lot more. If you enjoy videos like this, make sure you also check out my playlist of deep web videos. And I hope you guys enjoy the video. I had been hearing rumors about the kind of stuff the deep web had to offer, and I knew I had to see it for myself. A few hours came and left as I sat there mindlessly clicking through links, which just directed me to more web pages with more links. After a good amount of searching, I finally found what I was looking for. Now, to understand the story, you should know I enjoy some pretty taboo smut. Nothing too horrendous like pedophilia or bestiality, but just suffice to know that I'd rather you not know, even when I'm completely anonymous. I didn't choose to be this way, and for years I've tried getting help. But where can a man who enjoys this kind of thing turn? I can't tell any of my loved ones, which has caused quite a strain on many relationships, and has caused me to seriously contemplate suicide on many occasions. Hundreds of hours have been spent sitting with a loaded Glock sitting on the table, telling me what I ought to do. They say that 4% of the US population has similar urges. That means out of the nearly 320 million people here, there are around 12 million people who share this sick desire and understand what it's like. I spent a few hours browsing around, making sure not to download anything because I know the feds would surely be busting down my door then. As I sit here being titillated, I notice a chat box pop up on the upper right hand corner of my screen. A whole lot of messages popped up, and the gist of them were saying that I deserved to die, and they were going to hunt me down and put my head on a stick. I honestly wasn't too rattled by this, until the vigilante bastards appeared in some video chat and started putting my address and personal information on the screen. This guy even knew the PIN number to my bank account. I really didn't even know that number myself, but seeing it on the screen I knew it was correct. He then sent me a picture of a man who seemed to be brutally tortured. I mean, this guy's corpse was the kind of thing you couldn't unsee. Most of the skin appeared to be flayed or peeled off. There were multiple gunshot wounds, and it even looked like the guys decided to piss on this poor bastard's body when they were done with him. In the chat box they said, "You're next." I nearly shat my pants at the sight. I slammed my laptop shut and thought I broke it at first, but I was hardly fazed. I went downstairs to sulk. I was far too apathetic to cry at this point in my life, but I sat there and I really thought about my situation. What kind of a God would make me this way? Make me to suffer, without pity from anyone? I know for a fact, nobody would have sympathy for me if I came clean about it. I went to the kitchen and got a bottle of Jack, the only friend I had left, and began to drown in an ocean of self-pity. I couldn't help but think how much better my life would have been had I not been born this way. Maybe I was better off dead, and if those guys found and killed me, the world would be a better place. I tried shaking off this depressing feeling and went inside and pulled out my old diary. Call me whatever you'd like, but I honestly love reading some of the stuff I'd write down in my earlier years. I looked back and thought about the time I almost became captain of the wrestling team, but Vincent Mahoney got it. I remember not really putting up too much of a fight for it. I skipped a few pages ahead and was reminded of how my nearly incompetent coworker became my boss. Geez, that guy was an idiot. But in retrospect, I let him really take advantage of me and make himself appear like a hard worker to all the bosses. It slowly dawned on me that I have allowed people to push me around my whole life because I felt guilty about who I was. I always thought if I could just resist the urge, that I could have turned out like a typical heterosexual. That's all I ever wanted to be. But I am done with apologizing for who I am. I am done with having to feel this way all the time. And most importantly, I'm done with allowing people to push me around. I went back to my computer and checked if those hackers were still messaging me. It took a few seconds, but they must have gotten some kind of notification the instant I logged back on. just to continue harassing me. I told them if they knew where I lived, I'd be waiting for them. This caused an irritable reaction. They all started screaming like truckers in a wild cacophony of vitriol. I smiled as wide as I was physically capable of and shut my computer down. I knew they'd be here sooner or later, and I knew I had to be prepared. I laid out a few traps around the house before I left to the gun store. When I got there, I purchased an MP5K submachine gun and a 9mm just in case. I lived a few miles away from a small gun shop owner who was notorious for being anti-government and pro-Second Amendment. If there was someone to go to for under-the-table weaponry, he was the one. I loaded the weapons in the parking lot, tucking the handgun in my pants and the MP5K into the passenger side of my car. I told myself that I was not going to be pushed around any longer. I pulled up down the road from my house and I tried looking to see if there were any cars I didn't recognize. There weren't. When I got into my house, I searched around, expecting someone to be there, but it was just me. I made sure to set up a whole bunch of traps around my house, mostly bear traps and wires that flung knives at you if you tripped it. I was incredibly resourceful when it came to stuff like this. I have had an act for building things since I was young, and now it was really starting to pay off. I went to sleep dreaming about putting a bullet through each and every single one of their heads. By the next day, I almost expected them not to show up at all. They must have just been messing with me, I thought. Later that night, when I was enjoying some of my favorite kind of amateur smut, I heard a car driving down my street. It was pretty late, and there was seldom a car on my road at this time of night. I stood up and made sure my P90 was loaded. I saw 3 men in jeans and sweatshirts get out of the car a few feet from my house. I felt the adrenaline overtake my body in the anticipation. I pointed the barrel of the gun toward them and unleashed hundreds of bullets in their direction. I could tell I'd completely taken them by surprise, because that actually did the job. Murder can be so draining. I may have just pointed a gun and pulled the trigger, but I felt like I'd just sprinted a marathon. I stood over their bullet-ridden corpses and looked over them to make sure they were really dead. After confirming they were, I burnt the bodies in some distant part of the woods. Since then, I've been using the deep web to accommodate my particular fetish, and no one else has shown up to attempt to rid me from the world. And that's not to say I don't get death threats and things of the sort on a daily basis. I just brush it off and keep my weapons loaded.